We're good to kick it off. Great. So, hey everybody, welcome to today's webinar on using CircleCI for CI/CD with GitLab as the VCS. My name is Derry Bradley, and I'm a senior solutions engineer here at CircleCI. Been working here for coming up on about 3 years, 2.5, 3 years, as a solutions engineer. Before this, I worked as a software engineer, very much so in the platform team space, rolling out governance gates, Kubernetes integrations, and CI/CD infrastructure. Bit of a fun fact about myself: I worked in construction across Dublin, Toronto, and Vancouver before moving into my software career. My GitLab name, which you can see on the screen, is Stone Monkeys. For those fans of indie rock, that's Stone, that's short for Stone Roses and Arctic Monkeys. My LinkedIn is on the screen, and you can also see my contact email, which I'll share with you all again at the end of the call. And you can see by the photo, which I keep meaning to update before I run one of these webinars, so that I'm trying to hold on to how I might have looked back in my early 20s as much as possible. But for folks still joining, welcome. You haven't missed much, just a general introduction about myself, and we're going to get into a bit of the agenda, what we're trying to cover today. So as I mentioned already, we're excited to have you join and explore how you can basically integrate CircleCI as your continuous integration and continuous deployment platform when you are using GitLab Cloud as your version control system. And just to emphasize that through the demo today, we will be leveraging GitLab Cloud as the VCS. However, if you are using GitLab self-hosted, that is no problem whatsoever. A lot of the themes are very similar. However, just to keep that in mind, the demonstrations today will focus on leveraging GitLab Cloud for the different execution or for the VCS, I should say. And a bit of the agenda. We're going to cover who and what is this for, what this demo is about, who we're basically trying to target, the different teams, the different personas. We'll then get into creating your CircleCI organization. We'll get into concepts at CircleCI, key terminology, basically how we define things here at CircleCI. Very quickly, then we'll look to getting your project set up on CircleCI. It'll be a hello world. It'll be an empty project that is living in the GitLab VCS. We'll get that up and running on CircleCI, or should I say, get a green build running in that project, in that repository within the GitLab Cloud VCS. And then we'll get into basically more of a fledged out kind of path to production demo. And I'll show you a reference architecture of the production ready demo environment that we're going to deploy to. And then we'll show you a bit more in terms of CircleCI's feature list, and how we can help get your applications out to your customers in a secure, reliable, and fast manner, I should say. At the end, we will have time for Q&A. We'll have lots of time for Q&A, so don't worry. I'm going to any questions that come through. Feel free to pass them through as you come along, or you can keep them for the Q&A at the end. That will be no problem whatsoever. So I guess first thing, who is this conversation for today? First off, we're going to be wearing the developers using GitLab as a VCS. And these are focused on agility, as you can see on the screen here right now, but they also want to make sure that they can get their applications out to their customers as quickly as possible, and they can validate the changes that they're making to their applications. They don't necessarily want to spend too much time They don't want to necessarily spend too much time, they don't necessarily want to spend too much time managing, maintaining, having to deal with the nitty-gritty under the value line of a CI/CD tool. They want to focus on getting their applications out to their customers as quickly as possible. Awesome. Sorry, just seeing that coming through there from marketing on my end. I think I am sharing the right slides, which is cool. So awesome. Perfect. So secondly, we want to wear the hat of kind of security and governance teams who are using the VCS. So how can they enable their development teams to, I guess, have leverage over how they are delivering their application software, but with the proper guardrails in place? So we'll really want to focus on that later on in the demo also. And then, of course, platform engineering teams and DevX teams who are leveraging GitLab Cloud as the VCS. They're focused on scaling, they're focused on reducing cost, and they want to provide visibility and provide that tooling, software delivery tooling to their engineering team. So we're going to switch between these different roles as we go through our demo today. However, the first thing that we're going to do is create a CircleCI organization. And an organization on CircleCI refers to basically a shared account where a team can collaborate. It can be associated with multiple team members and their personal CircleCI accounts. Through a CircleCI organization, you're going to be able to add or remove users, manage user roles for the organization, as well as invite different users to start collaborating and building within your organization. And it's important to note here that the GitLab integration with CircleCI introduces the idea of standalone projects. So they're not specific to a VCS, and we'll see what I mean by that in just a few moments. So if I pull up my browser here, what we'll see is the CircleCI homepage. And this is going to be your first kind of stop shop when you go to CircleCI. To get your first organization up and running, we'll head over to sign up. And you'll enter your personal email address. So my personal email address that I'm going to use today is derrybradley2024@gmail.com. And this could be your work email address, whatever it might be going forward, but I'm using a personal email address today. And my password is going to be, make sure that I'm ticking all these boxes in terms of password validation. Let's not save that. And what I'm expecting now is basically to start the configuration of my organization. So I'm going to say that I'm using CircleCI for work projects. How many engineers are at my company? 100 to 500, for example. And is my team building on AI or ML? No, today. For the purpose of this demo, I'm going to say no. And what you'll see then is basically I'm authenticated into CircleCI under that user. And what I can do is I can start to create my new organization. Okay. So I'm going to call this Derry's work organization, work org, and we'll say 2024. I'm going to say, let's go. So very easily, in a very straightforward fashion, what we just saw is how I created my CircleCI organization. And in the organization homepage, you're going to be able to see how you can create projects, get access to different insights, who is actually active in your organization, and basically how your organization is trending in terms of credit usage, and basically how much you're spending on CircleCI. So that's what you're able to see in the homepage straight away. Obviously, I just created that organization, so there isn't a whole lot going on. So I'm going to log into my personal organization, where there is a bit more going on, and just for the purpose of this demo. And again, Stone Monkeys. Stone Monkeys GitLab is the name of my organization in this use case. I'm just building on GitLab actually in this, but as I mentioned, you can create projects coming in here from other sources too, which is pretty cool. You can see the applications that I have up and running here, and you can see some of the insights, and we'll get into what insights are on CircleCI later on in the conversation. There's only one user active in this organization. It is just myself, and you can also see down the bottom key things trending in terms of credit usage, etc. I'm going to jump back over to the slide deck. So what did we see? What did we see just now? We saw how you can create an organization very quickly on CircleCI, and a quick overview of what that organization home looks like. On the left-hand side, you see things around pipelines, projects, releases, insights. We're going to tick all those boxes throughout the demo, throughout the conversation today. But in terms of pipelines on CircleCI, so what is a pipeline? And how do we define things on CircleCI? And I want to talk you through the CircleCI configuration hierarchy. So a pipeline consists of everything that is defined in your configuration.yaml file that will sit in your CircleCI folder in your repo. So everything defined in your config.yaml, we write our configuration as YAML code here at CircleCI, and I'll get a bit more into that later on. And that will make up your pipeline. One level down from the pipeline, we have what we call our workflow. And our workflow is just basically your job orchestrator. And what it does is it allows you to introduce a dependency matrix into how your jobs are run, and when they're run, how they're run, etc. A job is basically its own independent execution environment. And its own independent execution environment, and then a number of steps that make up a job. So basically a job is a clean deterministic environment every single time. You could spin up a job on an execution environment and carry out a step, or a collection of steps, I should say. And a step is just a collection of executable commands which are run within a job. So this is basically our configuration hierarchy in CircleCI. I did mention that everything is defined as a YAML file, and all our configuration is defined as a YAML. And I want to introduce you to the idea of config policies. So config policies leverages OPA under the hood, and if this is more geared towards probably the security and the security folks and platform engineering folks on the call today. When you, anything that is defined in your config.yaml, anything that's going to go through your build system, you're able to lock down and secure with config policies. So it's a really powerful tool, and it's something that we'll look at later on in more detail. But basically, you're able to write policies that will live on your organization. And if a config does not comply with those policies, you're able to block the execution of that pipeline, or actually just give a warning also. So we have a hard and soft failure there, and we'll see that in action later on in the demo. Just here's the CircleCI configuration hierarchy in terms of terminology, just as I guess to show you, as you might have heard them before on GitLab. So a pipeline is a pipeline. Basically, the only difference is on GitLab, a stage is in comparison to our workflow. Everything else is pretty similar in terms of terminology. In terms of resource classes in CircleCI, so I mentioned already that each job, so if you look on the left-hand side here, each box here represents a job. It has its own independent execution environment. So you can bring as many jobs as you want with as many different execution environments. So you can have Windows, you can have Mac jobs, Linux jobs, Docker jobs, and you can also have your own runners that are executed on your own infrastructure. We'll look at that also throughout this demo. But all these jobs can live within and be executed within a single workflow. So also powerful stuff there in terms of the execution environments. But also in CircleCI, we can scale up to some really powerful resource class sizes. So in terms of Docker, you can scale up to 20 CPUs, 40 gigabytes of RAM for those jobs heavy on compute. However, if it's just a simple Mac job, for example, or doesn't require the same amount of compute as a M1 large, you can scale down to a 4 CPU, 6 gigabyte of RAM for an M1 medium, for example. And here's our documentation of all the different resource class sizes that we have available for you out of the box, ready to go in our cloud environment. When it comes to integrations on CircleCI, we have a concept called orbs, and orbs are just an abstraction layer that sit on top of your config that enable you to integrate with third-party environments like AWS, like Datadog, like GCP, whatever it might be. So basically pre-packaged config that are ready to go to get you up and running, get you building on CircleCI very quickly, and test reassured. And a lot of these orbs are owned, maintained, and hydrated by CircleCI. What's really cool, and we'll look at the orbs in a bit more detail, or orb registry, etc. later on. You can also write your own orbs if you want to instill best practices across different projects, or ensure that all of your, I guess, security needs are being met. Security steps are being met, I guess, in terms of like governance gates, etc. You can write your own orbs and share them across different projects. And with that config policies that we spoke about earlier on, you can make sure that your config executes this orb in your build or deployment of your application. So really powerful stuff there, what we can do with orbs, and then how we can enforce that they're being executed with the use of config policies. We're going to start looking at the product view. So in terms of the product view, what I want to show you is basically what we just walked through. Actually, I'm going to go back over here for a second. And what we just walked through in terms of the configuration hierarchy, what does that in the CircleCI UI. So this is our pipelines view on CircleCI, and this gives you basically a bird's eye view of everything going on across your organization. So any projects that you have access to on CircleCI, you're going to be able to see what's going on within them from here. You can filter by projects, you can filter by branch, success rate, etc. And 54 here, number 54, this represents a pipeline. One level down from the pipeline, we have our workflow, which again is your job orchestrator. On CircleCI, each of these boxes represents a job. It has its own independent execution environment. And let's take a look at what that looks like for this unit testing job, for example. We can see that's being executed on a Docker large image. And we can see all the steps that are being carried out within that job. So that job's going to spin up. It's going to carry out these steps on that Docker image, and then it's going to be turned down. So it is a deterministic environment every single time for your builds, which is really important. So jumping back over to our slide deck for a second. So we just walked through our configuration hierarchy. We saw what it looks like in the UI. So let's get our first green build on a CircleCI on a GitLab project. Again, I'm going to jump back over to my GitLab organization. In my organization home, I'm going to hit create project. And just before this webinar, I created a project in GitLab, and it's called Bank of Aon Backend. So it's going to be, what we want it to be is the backend application for a banking app that we're going to build out for a demo. I'm going to go into, once I hit that create project, I'm going to hit GitLab. Again, we're using GitLab Cloud today. I'm already authenticated in, so it should be able to pick up that, which is great. It understands that I want to speak to the backend Bank of Aon project. And you notice like what I just showed you, I just showed you the empty repo. So there's no CircleCI config in there already. So how can we get a config building in CircleCI as quickly as possible? Well, I'm going to click this starter, this faster option here. And this is going to commit a CircleCI, start a CircleCI pipeline to a new branch on CircleCI. If I hit create project, I should see that application start building. And if I jump over to the UI, I might just refresh on the GitLab side of things. So I can see that there was a push created. So there's a webhook injected into this project on the GitLab side from CircleCI to enable push actions. Once a push is made to the project, it's going to start building on CircleCI. If I jump over to that CircleCI config or CircleCI branch that we just created, you'll see in the .circleci folder into our config. And what we will do is just take a look at what's going on here quickly. So there's the whole thing makes up the pipeline, as we mentioned already. One level down, we have the workflow, which is the job orchestrator. This is one single workflow with a single job. It says say hello. It's going to be executed on a Docker image. Going to check out the code, and it's going to execute say hello. So a very simple pipeline here. And what we can see is that is actually run and executed already. There's the workflow, there's the job, and there it's executed. So very quickly, you're able to see how we're able to onboard a project to CircleCI. Now, I know this is very basic, and there's nothing too exciting going on there. However, very quickly, what I was able to show you is how we were able to create a CircleCI organization, connect it to your GitLab VCS, and connect the individual, create a project and connect the individual project to a repository that is existing within the VCS. Okay, so very simple stuff there. Nothing too hard to follow, but there is some complex mechanisms, I guess, going on under the hood there. And what we were able to do is get it up and running very quickly. However, what I want to speak to today is, I guess, a demonstration, or I guess a workflow that might mean a bit more to some folks on the call here today. And we call this kind of our path to production demo. We're going to walk through this customer reference architecture. And basically what we see here is this is a reference architecture that I work for customers every single day. They're making a push to GitLab Cloud. Okay, when that push happens, they're going to use CircleCI's cloud executors to build, to lint and test their applications. They're going to build some sort of a Docker image, and in their private AWS account, where they have a vault instance running, they have a Nexus instance running. And we're connecting into a privately hosted vault here in this demonstration, because customers don't want to use static secrets within their CI/CD environment. A lot of them want to bring their own dynamic, or they want to bring dynamic secrets. So we're leveraging OIDC here to connect into that vault instance. We're then speaking back to CircleCI, building a Docker image and pushing it out to Nexus again, connecting in with OIDC. And then we're deploying out to EKS. And if it's on a feature branch, we're going to deploy out to a dev cluster. However, if it's on a main branch, we're going to deploy out to a dev cluster. And if that has been successful, we're then going to upgrade it and up level it, I should say, and deploy out to our production cluster. So this is a reference architecture that we see all the time. Quite a complex use case, secured, locked down, with all the benefits of some of our CI/CD capabilities that we're going to see today. Just to highlight here, you can also bring your own self-hosted runners for this use case, and we'll see how we can do that later on. So when I'm walking through this demo today, I want to do so with kind of 4 key themes in mind. The first of which is speed. So when we're talking about CI/CD or when you're evaluating CI/CD in general, we really preach that we want to focus on four key themes. The first of which is that speed. Second of which is efficiency. Third is going to be guardrails, and the fourth is releases. And we have a feature set list here at CircleCI that ticks all of these boxes. And I want to introduce you to how you can leverage some of those features here today. Okay, and on speed, the first one that we're going to speak to is configuration as code on CircleCI. So if I jump over to the VS Code extension, we saw earlier on, this is the project that we saw in the UI. So if you'll remember, I believe it had four jobs. It had a unit testing job, it had a sneak scanning job, it was then deploying out to Nexus, building a Docker image, deploying to Nexus, and also then deploying that Docker job out to deploying that Docker job out to deploying that image out to EKS. And when we're talking about configuration as code on CircleCI, I really want to drive home the point that we are an industry leader and a pioneer when it comes to writing configuration as code in YAML. We've been doing this for over 13 years and enabling developers, enabling platform engineers to leverage YAML-based configurations code to be, I guess, flexible, but also secure in how they're writing their configurations when it comes to CI/CD. Everything that we see in the screen here now is your pipeline. As I mentioned, everything that makes up your configuration file is your pipeline. One level down, we have the workflow, which is your job orchestrator. And with the requires key, we can start to introduce some of those dependency matrix that we spoke about. We have four jobs here. If we jump down to our jobs workflow, just to give you an idea what this looks like. So you can see in the sneak job, we have an independent execution environment, and then we have a number of steps. Similar to our unit testing job, we have an independent execution environment, and we have a number of steps here. So everything is configuration as code here on YAML. So that's great. I've made changes to my front end application. This is a React application. I've made changes to that. What we can actually start to see then is when we push those changes up to CircleCI, on the left-hand side, we have the VS Code extensions. So if you're leveraging VS Code today, what you're actually able to do is get real-time feedback in the IDE without having to context switch. So if you're wearing your developer hat for a minute, you're thinking, okay, so I've made changes to my CI/CD tool. In many instances, you might have to change UI. You might have to go to a different page. With CircleCI, all of this information is going to be available to you from within the IDE. So on the latest pipeline run, which is called build CircleCI in this use case, that's the workflow level. And here are the four jobs. So I'm able to actually get information live within the IDE, very much so to what I can do in the UI. But from a developer perspective, I want to operate above the value line. I want to focus on getting my applications out to customers as quickly as possible. I can start looking into some of the build logs, etc., right here from within the IDE. So that's really great, really powerful stuff. The next step, I guess, is, okay, what if we have a failed build on CircleCI? And from a developer's perspective, how can we start to address mean time to recovery and really reduce that workflow duration inherently by, I guess, addressing failed builds? So again, all of those logs are going to be available to you from within the UI. What we're able to do is jump over to the browser, and we can start again to really look into why this job may have failed. Okay, so we can rerun the workflow from the start. You can rerun the workflow from just a failed job also, which is really cool. I'll speak to rerunning the workflow of failed tests very shortly. And what you can also do is rerun the job with SSH. And that's some really powerful stuff, because what we can do here is when we rerun that job with SSH, the job is going to spin up, and it's going to spin up just that failed job. So you don't need to basically commit another change and wait for, if it was the 8th job in your workflow that failed, you don't need to wait for that to execute, wait for 8 other jobs to execute just to get some different feedback. You can spin up that job, just that single job with SSH. The UI will spit out an SSH key, which you can paste into your local terminal. And then what you can actually do is just start to debug within that environment live straight away. So really powerful ways that we can start to address some mean time to recovery on CircleCI. And the last thing that I want to speak about today when I talk about speed is workflow duration. So what capabilities do we have at CircleCI to enable you to reduce your workflow duration? The first one that I want to speak about is, if I jump back to pipelines, I'm going to go to the sample project that we've been using so far. CircleCI exploration. We have caching capabilities. Okay, so in a very similar way, I guess that you might cache your dependencies already. You can cache your dependencies on CircleCI. You can be your node dependencies or whatever kind of applications that you're building. The first thing to note is that by default on CircleCI, we will use the latest cache produced by any branch. However, you can define your own caching strategy and utilize that within CircleCI, which is really cool. I also want to introduce you to the idea of Docker layer caching. So in a very similar fashion to how you can cache your Docker layers when building Docker images locally, you can do so on CircleCI. And we can see that this job was able to build a Docker image in about 38 seconds. And that is because some of the layers were changed in the last run of this, basically. So we needed to build out those layers again. But whatever layers are available from the last run or from your recent runs will be cached within the build system. And if there's no changes, all those layers will be there and available, ready to go. And you can spin it up in a lot less than 38 seconds in a number. It'd be 1-digit seconds for sure, which is really cool. We saw a feature a few moments ago. Now, this is not a testing job, so rerun the failed tests is not active. But again, addressing mean time to recovery. If you have a testing suite with over 1,000 tests, for example, and just 10 tests fail, you're not going to want to rerun all of those tests again. So leveraging CircleCI and leveraging the CircleCI CLI, what you're able to do is just configure CircleCI to rerun the failed tests only. So again, really powerful stuff there in terms of addressing mean time to recovery and addressing speed. And the last thing in terms of speed that I want to touch on today that you can do when building your project in the Gitlab VCS is keeping that idea in mind of that 1,000 test suite that we spoke about a few moments ago. What we are able to do. Sorry, no, I think I just lost the UI for a second. What we were able to do, so if you have 1,000 tests, normally you're going to run them in sequential order. However, with CircleCI, you can actually configure it to run those tests in parallel. So you might remember earlier on in the config, you'll see that the unit testing suite has a parallelism of 3. What you're able to do is configure CircleCI to run those 3 nodes in parallel, and then split your test using CircleCI CLI, split your tests across those 3 different nodes that run in parallel. So again, really powerful tools that you can use here to reduce your workflow duration on CircleCI. Jumping back over to our slide deck, what I'm going to start speaking about now is efficiency and how you can leverage CircleCI as a platform team to really make sure that your developers are using your CI/CD tool of choice to be as efficient as possible. And the first thing that I want to introduce you to is our insights dashboard on CircleCI. So when it comes to software delivery, we want to track 4 key metrics. We want to track duration. We want to track mean time to recovery. We want to track throughput, and we also want to track success rate. So in CircleCI, you get this insights dashboard out of the box. So first off, you can get some key metrics around duration, credit usage for your organization, success rate, etc. And you can then start to drill down into the individual projects and look at this data in a bit of a more granular fashion. In your insights dashboard, you can look at it at the project level. And so if I jump back to think of Aon, for example, you can start to look at this data in more granular fashion. And you can look at key metrics such around duration, runs, success rate, etc. You can filter by days, you can filter by branches and also workflows. If you want to, I guess a bit more of a visual aid when viewing this data. So there's some nice graphs here that you can start to get, I guess, visualize this information. Also, you can go one level down into your job level. And here you can start to see things around average CPU, average RAM. And this is one of my favorite features and one of our customers' favorite features on CircleCI is that if you have a job that's using a lot of compute, this is where you can go, I guess, to start seeing why the job might be slow, why it's at 100% CPU, 100% RAM usage for the job, and then go back and start taking actions on this data. So really powerful stuff here. The last thing I want to talk about here is our testing insight. So this is, again, one of my favorite features on CircleCI, especially coming from coming from other tools that I've used in the past is I can get information on my tests straight away here. So I can see things around flaky tests, most failed tests, slowest tests, etc. And again, this data is all available out of the box. So you can come in here, you can start seeing why different jobs, why different workflows are taking longer, but most importantly, then you know exactly where to go and where to act on those different aspects of the workflow. So some powerful stuff here when it comes to insights and metrics availability on CircleCI. I just want to highlight all of this data is available to you through our API. And so if you want to start plugging this data into to run more complex queries on maybe Datadog or Honeycomb, that is absolutely possible. And we do that internally also at CircleCI. And we have some orbs, those third-party integrations to make that process very smooth, very efficient. Also, I want to talk about environment options quickly. So basically what we've seen so far in what I've shown you is leveraging CircleCI's cloud executors to orchestrate your builds, to host the UI, to also execute for the execution environments of the individual jobs. This is all using CircleCI Cloud. However, you can host it yourself in our server offering, and this will run on a Kubernetes infrastructure. And if for security or compliance reasons, whatever it might be, you have to do this, CircleCI can definitely solve your use case. And if this is something you'd like more information about, feel free to reach out to me. And yeah, we can get into that in a bit more detail. And finally, however, what we do see a lot of customers starting to use, even if they have those security and compliance reasons, it might only be for certain or individual jobs. So we do have that hybrid offering, and this is where you can leverage CircleCI to basically orchestrate your workflows, orchestrate your build system, host the UI, all of that good stuff. Maybe you can use CircleCI for 8 out of your 10 jobs, but for your deployment jobs, for security and compliance reasons, you must execute these on your own infrastructure. This is where you can start to leverage our hybrid environment and utilize basically either container runner, which is installed inside your Kubernetes environment, or you can also basically install a binary on either a Mac, on Windows, on Linux machines, and both only need outbound connections over HTTPS and to enable them to function. So this is an approach that we're seeing a lot of customers and a lot of organizations start to use. So leveraging CircleCI's cloud as much as possible. However, for the individual jobs, basically running them on your own infrastructure. And basically, the more you leverage CircleCI Cloud, the less time, the less money that your engineers have to, the less, I guess, the less of your engineering time that you're spending a lot of money on, you need to spend on basically managing, maintaining, and securing your build system. They can spend that time focusing on delivering value and delivering your applications to your customers. And finally, I want to introduce you very quickly to the idea of dynamic configuration. So folks may want different things to happen based on what parameters are passed into a certain build. And one use case that we see a lot with this is basically monorepos. So we have a monorepo on my team to orchestrate and manage the deployment of our EKS infrastructure. So we have a global layer. Actually, we recently we're not actually deploying out to JPAC anymore. So in this quick demo, you'll see just Mia and Neymar. So we have a global layer, and this has features that are basically common to all of our EKS infrastructure, like Route 53, IAM. Then one level down, we have our EKS there. So this is where we're basically deploying the EKS cluster, and in our platform team layer, we have, I guess, layers, and we have information and data that is specific to the individual environment. So Nexus configuration that's specific to EMEA, maybe the CircleCI release capability that's specific to Neymar, and that's where we're deploying that out. But if we change something in the EMEA layer, we're not going to want the whole of our infrastructure to rerun. That's a waste of resources. It's a waste of time. So this is where we can leverage CircleCI dynamic configuration to basically configure CircleCI to just run what we needed to run. So in the latest run, my team, I think this was just ran 1 day ago, actually. The global layer was changed. So because the global layer was changed, Neymar deployed the EKS. The EKS layer was deployed out to Neymar. The platform layer was deployed out also to Neymar, and the same to EMEA platforms. However, if just EMEA platforms was changed in that repository, so if just this, if I jump back up here, if just EMEA platforms was changed in our monorepo, what we would see is only the EMEA platforms layer was actually deployed. So some powerful stuff there in terms of dynamic configuration and how you can configure CircleCI to be as efficient, as resource friendly as possible, but also as time friendly in your software delivery process. Just checking time here. Yeah, I think we're doing okay. Want to speak then also to guardrails on CircleCI. So how can we give engineers the flexibility to basically deploy their applications as they see fit, but however, as a platform team, as a SecOps minded team, feel comfortable in what we're actually enabling the engineers to do. So the first thing that we're going to look at again is orbs here. So orbs, if you remember, are our abstraction layer that just sit on top of our config that enable third-party integrations. So you can see here I'm using third-party integration with AWS ECR here. And these are developed, anything that starts with a CircleCI are certified orbs. These are developed with best practice maintenance and security in mind from CircleCI. We have partner orbs. So you can see here that I'm using a sneak orb. And just to see that in action, to execute a sneak scan, I go to jobs. If I look at the sneak scan job, in just 2 lines of code, I was able to execute a sneak scan on my application to ensure that everything is A-OK. And again, this is developed and maintained by Sneak engineers, which is absolutely really cool with the help of CircleCI, of course. However, if you want to write your own orb, write your own third-party integration and add it, contribute it back to the community, that is absolutely possible. And we can help you with that process if that's something that you would like to do. So that's really cool. However, if you do not want to basically share or if you have some reusable configuration that you want to share across different projects and you don't want to share that with the community, you can absolutely have your own private orb registry and tie that to your organization, develop out your orbs with our help if necessary, and have them in a more private orb registry, so just visible and usable by folks within your organization. And if you want to take a look at actually what's going on under the hood in an orb, you can just click into it and you can see all the config here as you scroll down to the bottom, and all the commands, etc., that are available and usage examples there also, which is great. Secrets management on CircleCI. So when it comes to secrets on CircleCI, you can create environment variables that exist at the project level. And when it comes to secrets management, in terms of a KMS, we leverage HashiCorp Corp Vault under the hood. So I guess from an end user perspective, you're getting a fully fledged KMS without having to manage that Vault instance yourself. So that's absolutely awesome. You can create individual environment and variables or secrets that exist at the project level. You can go one level up, and you can create shared groupings of environment variables called contexts. And these exist at the organization level, and they can be shared and used across different projects within your organization. So if you have, maybe you have a group of environment variables that enable you to deploy to your production cluster, and you want to access this in different projects, that's absolutely possible here. And just to take a look at what that can be done. However, there are restrictions in place around, so there's no environment variables in that one, probably not the best example. There are restrictions in place that you can enable also. So you can basically add security groups, leveraging the VCS to different contexts. You can add specific project restrictions if you only want these contexts to be used within one project. And you can also add expression restrictions. And there's some really cool things that we can do with config policies that we'll take a look at in a few minutes to basically enforce and lock down your context even further. I mentioned already that CircleCI is an OIDC provider. So, and in the demos that we've seen so far, every time that we are deploying out to Nexus, or every time that we're deploying to the EKS cluster, we're leveraging OIDC to actually connect into that private vault instance, if you remember what I said already. So just to highlight also that CircleCI is an OIDC provider, and you can do some really powerful things there to basically enable that there are no static secrets in CircleCI if this is something that's of concern to your organization. If you just want dynamic secrets from a privately hosted vault, absolutely possible. And we have some cool demos and cool tutorials to get you up and running on that also, if that's something that you would be interested in. Configuration policies on CircleCI. So I introduced this concept at the top of the call. So at the organization level, if I jump back into some CI/CD and pipelines, projects, Bank of Aon. So at the config policies basically enable you to write policies that exist on your organization to ensure that all of your configs comply with the policies that are live on your organization. So in this example, and as I mentioned already, you can basically hard fail a pipeline. So if a config does not comply, you can say, hey, we do not want this to run, and block the execution of the pipeline. Or you can just do a soft fail, which we see on the screen here now. So in this example, we have a policy on our organization here that says, basically, if any image is deprecated, to let us know, let the developer know. So my teammate Moo here would have got this notification. And he basically knows, hey, that image is deprecated. We should probably update that image. So that's some really powerful stuff there. But as I mentioned, a really common use case that we see here is basically branch-based secrets. So with context, you can lock down certain context to only be available on certain branches, for example. So if I try to deploy to my production cluster, if I try to use my production context outside of my main branch, it's going to block the build. So some really powerful stuff there can be done. And just to mention, if it's in a config, it can be locked down with config policies. The policies exist at the organization level. As I mentioned, they are in Rego. So, and we have a lot of Rego helpers out of the box here to get you up and running. And if this is something that sounds really cool, as I think I mentioned, it leverages OPA, Open Policy Agent, under the hood. Hence, the policies are in Rego, so we can help you get up and running very quickly here in terms of making sure that you have the proper guardrails in place for your developer, while enabling your developers to still write their configs to still be flexible. So some really powerful stuff there. And also in our field guide, which is our public field guide, you can get some cool examples of out of the box, ready to go policies. It can also be used to basically control costs. So if you do not want your developers to use large resource classes, you only want them to use small, for example, you can use config policies to basically enforce that. So that is pretty much everything on Guardrails. We looked at reusable configuration, secrets management, and config policies. I just want to, next, what I want to talk about, and this is very new, is our releases capability. So if you're using GitLab as the VCS today, and you want to basically have an insight into your deployments to your Kubernetes cluster in terms of CD, in terms of being able to do things like rollbacks, to do progressive releases, this is very much so up your street. And it also, our release dashboard adds that end-to-end visibility for our customers, which they've been asking about so long. So in the use case that we saw already, if I jump back over to, where will I go? If I go to this workflow, for example, what we can see here, if I go organization home, sorry, pipelines, and this is all very much so still with the CI/CD side of it in mind. So when I run my workflow and I deploy out to production, so I can see from I get a green tick back, and it says, hey, we have deployed that application out to production. We deployed that application out to, let me see, we've deployed that application out to production. Here we go. Or here's one that's deploying out to dev, but we've no idea how this application is actually performing in production. Is it scaling? Is it healthy? Is it running as expected? Up until recently, you probably would have needed another tool to basically monitor all of that. And that didn't sit right with us in terms of us being a single tool for visibility. So what our release dashboard actually tries to address, I guess, is that really around enabling engineering and business confidence into your releases by automation, and then a visualization of what is going on from CircleCI within CircleCI. So we now have a release agent that is installed inside your Kubernetes cluster, and this is monitoring these deployments as they come into the environment, the state, the health, and the activity of those deployments. So our release agent will then coordinate and can coordinate with other environments that you might have in your environment already, other controllers that you may have in your environment already, like Argo rollouts, and all of that information is being sent back to CircleCI, to all the folks interested in the release dashboard. Okay, we're also exposing some key commands in the release dashboard, such as restoring a version, being able to scale a component if we see a lot of traffic coming in, and restart the component. And if you're integrated with tools like Argo Rollouts, what you can do is all from the release dashboard, retrying releases, promoting releases, canceling releases, and visualizing all of your progressive releases, all from within one IDE, one window, within CircleCI. So this is basically our release dashboard. As I mentioned, you can start getting an idea into those progressive releases. So we can see here is one that we ran yesterday. This is a Canary release. We're utilizing Prometheus also on the back end here, setting weights, pausing. If it's looking good, what we can do is we can actually just promote it up, which is really cool, really powerful stuff. As I mentioned already, you can start to cancel a release, retry a release, you can restore versions, all from within the CircleCI UI. Really powerful stuff when it comes to environments. So we can also now separate your releases by environments. For example, you could have a staging environment, a prod environment, a development environment, whatever it might be. And then you can see all the versions of the individual components that you create active, and how they are actually running across your environments. So you can see now exactly what is in that particular environment and all the instances of the individual components that are executed there. So here we can see the components in an individual environment. We can see that there's one replica currently running at this, so one container. However, we might want to scale that up, and we can do so there, which is also really cool. As far as slides are concerned, that is all that I have prepared for you today. So I'm going to open it up to Q&A. I know we have about 10 minutes left, so feel free to pass in any questions that you may have, which is absolutely great. Hey, Herbert. Yeah, so first question that has come in, I'm not sure if everybody can see them. So CircleCI free tier, it absolutely is a free tier. It is a very generous free tier, actually. So you can definitely go in, create some, building out some of your projects that you have in your VCS, and start testing out some of CircleCI's capabilities. No problem. Absolutely. I guess, yeah, that just some folks might start to drop off. So I do appreciate everybody coming. While we're waiting for some questions to come in, I appreciate everybody coming today. We're going to pass over this slide deck. We're going to pass over how you can get up and running on CircleCI very quickly from your GitLab CI environment, or for your GitLab VCS environment. We'll also pass over a recording of this demo, which is absolutely great. I don't see any other questions coming in, so we'll leave it open for another minute or two to see if anything comes in. But if not, on this, I guess at this point, just on behalf of CircleCI, I'd like to thank you for taking the time for listening to me today. It's been a pleasure to have you. If you want to find out more about CircleCI, please, we'll follow up as I mentioned, but please feel free to contact me at derry@circleci.com if you'd like a follow-up conversation. We can get that up and running very quickly. I hope you got a lot out of this conversation today in terms of seeing how easy you can get up and running with GitLab as your VCS on CircleCI. We covered creating a GitLab organization. We covered CircleCI terminology, and we also covered how you can create a project on GitLab, create a project on CircleCI from your GitLab VCS, which is awesome. And we also got to take a quick look at some of our features, some of our capabilities on CircleCI with those four kind of key themes in mind. And if you remember what they are, they're speed, efficiency, guardrails, and also releases. So yeah, I do appreciate everybody joining in today, and still don't see any other questions. Maybe we'll give it 30 seconds. And if not, I hope you have a good rest of your day. And again, thanks very much. Cool. I think we can call it now. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.